All right, and after I introduced Dan, we had another fellow sojourner arrive as well. So we have Chris here, who was on the trip with us as well, who is from Faith UMC on the other side of town, and she joined us today, so you'll see pictures of her too. But we're glad again that you have joined us here for this trip that Fran and I were part of starting in January to the Holguín Norte district. I wanted very briefly to, I'll read it to you if you can't see it, but just explain very quickly why it is we went to Cuba and went as a fellows from a district. There was formed years ago a relationship between the Methodist Church in Cuba and the Florida Conference of the UMC. And here's the kind of the statement: affirming our common bond in Jesus Christ and our historical Wesleyan ties. We, the members of the Methodist Church in Cuba and the Florida Annual Conference, proposed the Methodists United in Prayer, formerly known as the Florida-Cuba Covenant, I believe, as a relationship with one another. As we imagine our work and uphold the values for common ministry, we envision the fruits of our common work. And these are the things that we have pledged to one another, including this church, Tice UMC, that has a sister church that we'll see pictures of in a bit. But we pledge to focus our efforts on the priorities of our two conferences, to pray for one another and develop a common study of scriptures, to engage in the interchange of peoples of Cuba and the Florida Conference's work teams, preachers, laity, caravan study teams for pastors, teachers, and choirs, to respond to the priorities of the Methodist Church in Cuba, to build relationships between the Florida Conference and the Methodist Church in Cuba for mutual support and encouragement, to enable the training of pastors and lay people for the equipping of Cuban disciples, and to mutually share the history, current events, culture, and spirituality of both conferences. So on January 16th, a group of us from the Southwest District, representing different churches in the group, traveled that day. And this is a picture from the very first church that we visited that had lunch at, which actually it wasn't from our district, but they have relationships with Dan and others, and were so gracious and hospitable. On the lower left here, that's Reverend Lisa DeGrania. She's the pastor at Trinity in Sarasota. The gentleman's name is Tom, and he is from First Punta Gorda. And then that's Chris from Faith UMC right there. And I don't know if y'all know these two people, but that's me on the left and Miss Fran on the right. And in the background, you can see on the left, that's the pastor of the church we were having lunch at. In the center is Isel, Pastor Isel, who's the district superintendent of the Holguín Norte district.
And our bus driver.
Oh, and our bus driver, yes. Yeah, so what you can see here mostly is rice and beans, or frijoles. Yeah, we got a lot of that, and you'll see more food throughout. This one isn't great because I combined two, but we had also
tomatoes.
We had tomatoes and cabbage because that's what's in season. The cabbage is in season, so basically everywhere we went, those were the main vegetables. What else did we have, guys? Cucumbers, right. Here we had the candied papaya that I had before, but other folks hadn't, and they fell in love with it. So that was very tasty. If you eat it with cheese, it's delicious. All right, so we'll keep going through, and we will have a time for questions too at the end. But here's the bed and breakfast that we stayed at, since we were a group that was bit large, and also since our plans didn't turn out quite like we thought, we ended up at a bed and breakfast here. By what we didn't think was going to happen, I mean that we were supposed to go with religious visas, and Pastor Lisa and myself, presumably, were going to preach at a conference over there, or at some of the worship services, but what happened was that we didn't end up getting religious visas. We weren't allowed to get them in the month of January for some reason, and so we went on tourist visas, which meant that we weren't allowed to stay at the church. We weren't allowed to like participate in any of the church services. Like, we could go and worship at an already scheduled service, but we couldn't like stand up and be presented officially or anything like that. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. So our plans didn't quite happen like we thought, but then it ended up that like God had other plans anyway. So so we stayed at a bed and breakfast. We weren't able to stay at any of the churches. And Fran can jump in whenever she wants too. She has a microphone in her hand. Oh, you can't see that very well. I wonder if we had a light off or something. You can see it on my screen. You still can't see it. Yeah, well, you can actually see him on my screen though. I don't know why you can't see him there, but that is the silhouette of Dan who is here. He's sitting on one of the rocking chairs at our bed and breakfast.
That's a good picture.
Yeah, I don't know why it looks so dark. You can't really tell about is it the projector or?
Dan was up early in the morning, so the two of us, and then Tom came out, and we all had coffee together at 7. The rest of them were still sleeping.
It's better, yeah. You can see Dan a little bit.
Yeah.
Thank you. So yeah, just to show you kind of what it looked like. It's a beautiful place. Bunch of beautiful plants. There was a cow next door that provided the milk for the morning. There was roosters that crowed at all hours of the night for some reason next door. Yes. And this was where we had our breakfast every day together with the coffee, of course. I mean, it was just a gorgeous place. And this lady here on the left was the owner, her and her husband's bed and breakfast, and this is her son. She was about to give birth the days after we left. But they were wonderful hosts.
The papaya that Pastor Esther's eating, we had every morning, fresh papaya.
Yes, and we forgot to take pictures of the room, but Fran and I bunked together, and she has a story to tell you.
It was about the next morning, in fact, somebody said, "Did you feel the earthquake?" "What earthquake?" I felt the bed shake. I thought, oh, Esther just bumped into me, but it was a 5.8 earthquake. I know it.
Yeah, apparently Fran thought I was trying to like snuggle in the middle of the night or something, and no, it was an earthquake, which a lot of folks didn't feel it, but I felt it. I remember like half asleep and half awake, feeling just the bed move and thinking, oh gosh, I hope it's not awful because my mom's gonna watch the news and freak out, is what went through my mind as I'm half asleep. But that was my first earthquake, so that was kind of interesting. But we spent most of our time kind of when we were off or hanging out was in Mayari. This is where the district superintendent also leads a church, because all of the superintendents there, it's not like here where that is like your one job, you are DS. In Cuba, you are district superintendent and you also are pastoring a church, one church at the same time. So we were transported the whole time by the DS. So whenever we were like in between churches or after breakfast, we would come to this church and to the parsonage. This is their sanctuary, and this is their parsonage, living room, dining room area. Shortly after, we got there, we were going to be visiting different churches throughout the week. And instead of the district conference, that didn't end up happening at all. And so we had brought some things We bought clothing for young boys. For our sister church, we had some of the dresses here that you all made.
Apron dresses.
Yes, and so we were sorting these together. And also I went out to Walmart with some of the funds from the Cuba ministry and bought multivitamins and other hygiene products and that sort of thing. So we were sorting those out. We sorted those out in Mayari. And we always had lots of food. They treated us very well. Not to be confused with the fact that they don't usually eat like this, but when we're there, they eat like this. I don't know if Fran wants to say something about the food.
Well, there'll be more of it. You've got more pictures of the food, haven't you?
I think later.
Yeah.
This is my East.
Right. But next to Tom, in the yellow shirt, Lily is one of our translators. Great girl.
Yes.
She did a great job.
So in the bottom right, yes, thank you for that. Bottom right, next to the left of the yellow shirt is Lily, and then on the top left, next to me, is Mary.
The other translator.
She's the other translator.
Yeah.
So before we headed out to other churches, there was an event that was held in Mayari where the pastors from the district came. And so this is one guy that we were talking to who's a very funny guy.
And he's wearing a Sam Galloway hat when I met him.
He was wearing a Sam Galloway hat, so Fran pointed that out to him, and then he started telling us lots of stories. Because his sister church, we visited, I think he has a sister church.
Yes.
And so they know folks they know Dan and they knew Chris and other folks that had visited, and that's how he had the hat.
Yeah, his church in Cape Coral sent it to him.
That's what it was. And so we were able to see Ernesto, our sister church pastor, at that event, even though it was somewhat brief. We were able to see him there, and his little girl was there, who turned 2 in November. And so this event, all the pastors had to make it here somehow, so some of them borrowed cards, because transportation is a great challenge in Cuba, and most folks don't own vehicles. They have like public transportation. So the bottom left is actually the car that Ernesto borrowed from a friend to come. And then the bottom right is a tractor that a church, one of the local churches got, and they attach a trailer to the back of it, and they pick up church members in that tractor so that they are able to go to church. So that tractor is like a really big deal for them, and they came to that conference in that. And so during the conference there was also this gift exchange, which was really fun to watch. This was the only part of the conference that we were able to watch because we weren't allowed to be even in the other parts of it. We had to go and walk around because we were on a tourist visa. So, but we got to see the gift exchange, and it was kind of like a secret Santa, but they bought each other, they had assigned pastors, and they bought each other things, and they were typically very practical things. You can see here like a fan. Some folks got like pieces of furniture, because a lot of folks don't have like furniture or things in their...
He made the furniture that he bought.
Yeah, they don't have furniture like in their houses and that sort of thing, but they also gave out like goats, like on the bottom left, and like chickens, because they were also very practical things for them. So here you can see that our pastor and his wife Annie got a chicken as a gift. But it was very funny because they had so much fun with each other, and like this goat is hiding because they had it in a sack hiding. They were going to surprise whoever was their pastor with it. And so this is the nurse checking on us. She wanted to come and check our temperature because we were tourists. Apparently this is the first time it's happened to Dan. But what we suspect is that they knew this event was going on and they were checking to see if we were participating in it or not, but supposedly coming to check our temperature. So we got our temperature checked. You can see the list down there. I think Lisa and I tied for the hottest people in the group. I can't even read it anymore. It's in Celsius. It's down there. What does it say? 30 something? 36.
36 was one of the higher ones.
I think, yeah, it was 36 degrees Celsius. We had been walking too, so we were supposedly hot. So the first church we officially went to was Guado Church, and the sister church for this is First Punta Gorda, which was Tom's church. So just as a reminder, not all of the churches that we visit are going to have sister churches, and some of them are going to be missions and not have help from anyone or connections. So there's a variation of sizes, and some are missions and not officially churches yet. But this church has a sister church, and we visited it.
And you can tell the difference.
Yes. And yeah, Chris was trying to ring the bell. We climbed up, and just a beautiful sanctuary. They had just built a very large parsonage. Very beautiful parsonage. And this is Tom bringing gifts from their sister church as well. I mean, it was great to see him do that for them. And there's every animal that I found I tried to pet. Chris did too, but there's a cat in the top right. Do you want to talk about the horse and buggy, Fran?
No.
So just so you know, now you know what my 8 days were.
Yeah, right. No, Tom's Sunday school class or Bible class raised enough money to buy this pastor a horse and buggy because they have no other transportation. They either walk, ride horseback, or bicycles.
And so yeah, it was their youth group that raised those funds, and he was really excited to bring those to him as well, to do with them what he was able to do. Another two churches that we visited were Viran and Marcané. This was the Viran church, and you can see the filters on the right. Most of the churches, I would say, already kind of have gotten their filters. You know, our church paid for our sister church's filters too, and were able to take them on that original flight, and we took refills this past time, but you can see that they have them. They're very proud of them. Whatever church we went to, they just cherish them and have them safely protected and that sort of thing. So this is one of the churches that we visited. Birang is, remind me, what was the special message?
Was where Castro was raised.
Right.
Where he lived.
Birang is like the neighborhood or the city,
Yeah,
where Castro and the Castro family were. They had farms and things like that. And then this was Marcané, which is a very interesting story. So there's like a gas shortage happening in Cuba. What we're told is in part is because of what's going on in Venezuela, because Venezuela usually provides their gas, or a significant portion of their gas, but also because of the presumed increase in tourism
in the black market.
And so, like, regular people are having a hard time finding gas. And so we travel a lot throughout this large district, and we were kind of running low on gas, and the DS wasn't really finding, stations that had gas. So he called and found out that someone had gas at this church, or that they could stop at this church. And so we weren't planning on stopping at this church. But we stopped at this church to get gas, and it was at
Wednesday night.
It was at night at that point, and they were having a service. And so we got to talk to the pastora. In this case, the woman is the pastor. And we got to talk to them, and when Lisa, the pastor Lisa, who was traveling with us, got there, she noticed that there was two girls there that she had been talking to or seeing, connecting with earlier in the day at the pastor's activity, and it was just like a very God moment for her to even see them there. She didn't think she was going to get to see them again.
The girl was as excited about seeing Lisa as Lisa was about seeing the girl.
Yeah, because they don't speak the same language, but they kept interacting, and she had ended up giving her a little gift. Lisa had given her a little gift. But then when they saw each other, it was just wonderful. Then come to find out that the pastor is in seminary, or about to start in seminary, but has been unable to do her homework assignments because she didn't have a computer. And Lisa had a computer that someone had given her that she didn't know what she was going to do with. And so for Lisa, this was just a very holy moment that we accidentally stopped here. She encountered these girls that she'd connected with and found somebody who was specifically in need of a computer that Lisa did not know what to do with.
Nothing happens by accident.
And so the daughter of the pastor prayed with us and for us, and is a tremendous young lady. I don't know, she was probably like 12 years old or something.
Not more than that.
12, 14, and it seems like she has a call in her life to witness in some way, maybe to preach, because she did a wonderful job. So this was a very holy moment that was like a seeming accidental stop for gas.
Awesome.
So another day we went to Sawa, Pontezuelo, Moa, and Centeno. This was the first stop, and place is known for coffee, close to the mountains, and you can see that they cook the food. Most of the places here, kind of outside or on
The rice and beans are over the open fire, the bananas, and then this happened to be a fellow had caught these fish and shared them with us while we were there. They were excellent too.
Yeah, and so we got to be there while they were cooking. They had with these watermelons with red seeds that were great.
Be nice to know if they grow up next year.
Yeah, we were spitting out all the seeds in their front yard when wondering if we were starting a field in the front or something. But we got to spend some time with this family, visit their church and pray with them. Every church that we visited, we had the opportunity. This was the really neat thing that, this wasn't what we were planned to do or supposed to do, but ended up doing, which was very much God-led, was that we got to sit down with each of these families and talk to them about life and ministry and pray with them and share with them about, similar common struggles, and it was just a tremendous blessing to be able to do that. And so we were with this church family in their home. And how far was their home from the church? A couple miles was their home, and they don't have a car or a horse or a bicycle. So they walk to the church whenever they have to go to the church. Rain or shine. Just a lot to teach us. This is a church that we stopped by quickly because another need that God met was they were about to lose this property if they didn't find, the district found the money to pay for it. Just one of the things the government does, kind of last minute, I guess. And Lisa's church had collected some funds that ended up going towards this as well. And so we stopped on the way somewhere else to hear. And the pastor wasn't there, so we just went around. This is the church at Moa, and it's another kind of smaller church that's rebuilding. The gentleman that's leaning there, that's the pastor. And he and his wife and their doggie, who is an adorable doggie, not to get distracted. But we got to spend time with them as well, and it was just, Dan asked him some really neat questions while we were there about how we know this is his church, and just the idea of that this small space and so many challenges, he had great dreams and vision for this congregation and all that they can do. And so Dan affirmed that that was the church he was meant to be at, that was his church, because he could dream those dreams and have those visions from God to minister to that community. This is another church that we visited. Just the hospitality was tremendous at every single place that we went. They went over and above. Again, they treated us.
They gave us, I felt kind of, I don't know what the feeling is, but they are so poor, and then for them to give us gifts, it makes you very humble. She's pulling up
Yucca.
yucca.
And they had a little honey a beehive. That's what it's
Yeah.
called. And so they brought some fresh
You can
honey.
see it down the bottom left corner that you can't tell that that's honey, but it's honey in the comb, and oh, is it good? Mmm. Yeah.
They were cooking the meat out here, and yeah, just I don't know if that's like a water filled thing up there, a pump, or that holds water up there, I don't know, but I took that picture because it struck me so much, and I've actually looked at that picture a lot since I've gotten back. It says happy in Christ. It's something that is elevated high for all to see. And the fact that's what they wrote, they decided to write up there, happy in Christ, was just very touching. I didn't put the pictures of the inside of their home just because, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily want someone to put pictures of the inside of my home, but they are very kind of, this particular church was great need. You can see their sanctuary. They're currently building, and so to them, this is an improvement. Here on the top left, the blue building is the sanctuary, right? And then the
roofs are held down with stones or whatever they can find.
Further down is the parsonage, and this family lives in a kind of a small space. They're together. And they did prepare a feast for us, and then at the end gave us gifts, which is what Fran was talking about, that she was very taken aback by that. That they gave us their best and more, and all that food that they got was because they knew we were coming, and they went presumably in the black market to find it, because they would not get that food normally. The rations they get are nowhere near any of that on a monthly basis. They have to go out and find it to feed us, basically.
Is that their Coke bottles? Yeah, it's a big soda bottle.
Those are soda bottles, yes.
I never drink the water when I go out, so I drink, and I don't buy anything else, but the filtered water, the rest of the crew drank the filtered water. We had, a big bottle that you guys filled and took every day from the...
Yeah, we drank the filtered water.
Yeah.
Fran drank soda.
Yep.
I was worried she was going to be dehydrated by the end, but she told me not to worry, so...
Now, did that church have a sponsor church?
No.
Or a sister church?
No. Their church is that living room where we're eating. And on the right-hand side of the picture is their living quarters.
They all sleep in the same room,
Right.
the kids and the parents.
How many people attend each church approximately? Are we talking 10 people?
It varies, yeah. I mean, there are some larger churches that have several hundred persons. There are churches that are missions that have 50. There are churches that have 30. It depends.
Well, the room doesn't look too big, that's what.
No, and the sanctuary is this on the upper right here, or at the bottom left.
That's the average size of the sanctuaries. The smaller
Yeah, you
ones.
can see. So this is another series of churches that we went to. This was like Friday at that point in the week.
There's the van that we traveled in.
Yes, and so we all traveled in this van. How many was it of us?
There was 9 of us
In the van.
in that van, and
We like loved on each other closely and dearly
the
for
roads
many
aren't very
miles.
con-
No, it wasn't hot because it's actually kind of cool that time of year there. It was even a little chilly in the mornings.
And even at night after the sun went down, it was cool.
Yeah, and we had the windows open so that, yeah, we didn't get like the exhaust from the van stuck in there that we did sometimes. But then like dust from outside and wind, and so that's the top one is the view of the van. But,
And the roads aren't that good. A lot of potholes. There was a couple nights we came back. I was so thankful I could have gotten down and kissed the ground.
Yes.
I didn't think we were going to make it. And I mean, here you're out in the middle of God's country, and I mean God's country. He's the only one that knows where we were. Nobody else knew where we were. But everybody down there has a cell phone. Every single body down there has a cell phone. That is their way of communication. They don't have internet, but they have email. Now you figure that one out. I still haven't.
Yeah. And so yeah, the luggage, we usually carried around luggage because it had, for each church, if we brought things that we were able to leave with them, like hygiene products or other things. And so this day we were headed, the end of the day we were going to go to Takahul, so for sure we had bags that day because we had our bags if no one else's. This is a brief stop that we did at this one church. Also a young couple who were just very honored to have our visit, which was interesting because we felt honored to visit them, but for them, the fact that people came to see them from like far away was like, wow.
Every place we went was the same way. Thank you for coming.
And yeah, I mean, there is a sense, I guess, of like that you are remembered, right? This idea that someone visits you means that you are remembered by someone. You are remembered by God. You are remembered and cared for. And we had the opportunity to pray with every pastoral family as well. This is another church. Their sister church is Grace Venice. Grace Venice. And my understanding is that I think it was Lily who told me that when Lily and Dan went not too long ago, you guys cried because the transformation had been immense. A young couple, a pastoral couple, moved from Havana to here, which is in the middle of nowhere, this particular place, and they have invested themselves greatly. This is their sanctuary area, and they have places where they hang up. They're just intentional about the aesthetic, but also about, like, they have here for their small groups and lots of information on here, and they gave us coconuts. Down here on the bottom right is where we had lunch, but they worked on this parsonage, which apparently was like awful when they got sent there, and she was pregnant at the time. I mean, it was just a very, a hurricane hit, that's what it was, yeah, and it was destroyed. And so it was just a very challenging situation. What I shared with the group, just throughout the trip, for me it was very meaningful. I mean, I've seen lots of poverty. I've been to Haiti multiple times, I've been to Nicaragua multiple times, been to the Dominican Republic, been to South Africa. I mean, it's not that it's like new to me, but this was a particularly meaningful trip for me because I was talking with pastors, I think, because I'm a pastor, right? And they're pastors, and we were talking as pastors, and I had to keep asking myself the question every day, would I be this faithful? Right? If I arrive at a place about to give birth and the hurricane had broken down and I left my mom on the other side of the island and there was no way that I could get back there, would I stay and work?
Their faith is unbelievable.
So, yeah, tremendous.
There's our food. There's our rice and beans. Was that goat that night?
I think we did have goat there. Yeah, that pig was that they had bought this pig and were raising it to sell it to buy a computer so that he could do his seminary work. But I think he ended up getting a computer from a sister church that day, so now they could do something else with the pig. But God answered their faithfulness in that way because they were planning ahead. And that's Dan in his hat there on the bottom. This is another church that we stopped at briefly, and I think they didn't know we were coming, if I remember correctly. And they were also kind of in the middle of nowhere. This was one of the smaller churches too.
There's one of the roads that we traveled.
Yeah, so that was like the road to this church. It was also come and talk with them, ask them questions. This is more roads. They have these cactus fences everywhere. You can see on the bottom right, which were very interesting. I was told that they were like poisonous, those cactus fences, which if the spines get you, yeah. So it's not only that you're risking like being pricked if you're trying to get through the fence, I guess, but you also get more. But this was on the way to this church, which was also a very kind of poor church. This is a mission, and it's a very recent one from what I remember, relatively recent. She's the pastor. and her husband is in medical school.
He's in his 4th year now.
His 4th year, and he has to travel basically throughout in the week. He has to hitchhike to go to, is it Mayari?
No.
Near Holguin.
Yeah.
He has to hitchhike near Holguin to get to Holguin, which is where the school is. But then he makes it back for the weekends to help with worship. He actually built, you can see on the top left, kind of the wood, kind of, I don't know, paneling, what to call it. He built that. He built some of the seats that we were sitting in. But this is another, so it's a mission church, so it's relatively new, as I mentioned, and what I heard from them that we were sitting there talking with them is that the district superintendent basically will say, we have a need in this community for a church. These persons are not able to, get to a church, or there is no church in this area. Basically, who will go? Whom shall I send, right? As the Old Testament says. And she said, here I am. And she got sent there, and she's there with her 2 kids and her husband, who travels every week, and who she holds down the base during the week in this place. They live in that bottom right place, and I think they were wanting money for a bathroom, so Chris can share about that.
Okay, I have a funny story about this because God works in many different ways. I had to use a restroom, and the only thing available was an outhouse. Well, the outhouse, you had to take the door and put it in front of you. There was no door. And so they had a metal plate at the end of the hole because the ground was caving in. Well, I leaned too far back, and I almost fell in. So, as we were leaving, Pastor Estelle, the district superintendent, said, I'd really like to be able to give these people funds to have a bathroom with running water. They have 2 children, they serve a congregation. I thought, oh, here you go, here's the money, God moment.
So yeah, our visit there, Chris was able to provide the money to build a bathroom, which was kind of amazing. and yeah, they was just, again, it was just holy for us to be with them and talk with them. Just great faithfulness, these folks. And then we went to Tagahoe, but we're going to save that for a little later. The next day we went to La Criolla in a neighborhood mission church. This was Saturday, so we're almost done with the week. La Criolla is Chris's church's sister church. So Chris, you can share whatever you want.
Where do you want me to begin? No, just kidding. Okay, so the pastor that is there now, Pastor Hermes and his wife, arrived in June, which was unexpected. They came from a city. They'd never been outside of the city. This is a country church. They had never been outside their district, and they're in a totally different district. So when I first met them in November, they were fish out of the water, and I felt so sorry for them because they were trying to just figure out what it's like to live in the country. There's chickens running around. There's, you have to walk for miles to get anywhere. And pastor's wife, she wouldn't go out alone. She was scared to death. She's scared to death of horses, I found out. And that's how you get around there in horse taxis. So I'm like, oh, this poor lady, how is she getting around? And so this trip in January, I could see that they were just settling in. They were starting programs for the elderly. They were having luncheons. He had planted already another mission church since I've been there in November. I was like, wow, they're really, and because I've been questioning why? Why did he get sent here? And then I realized there's such a he has so much experience. And he has so much to give that he was teaching leadership training classes. And it's an area that really needs education. And so Pastor Estelle reminded me, which I needed that reminder, and I always get these reminders when I go on these trips, is that God is in control. And that really hit home because he is right where God wanted him to be.
And yeah, they made a tremendous meal for us as well. And then you can see the kitchen there on the top right. That's where they cook their meals. Oh, the middle one is, yeah, the outhouse next to the kitchen. And Chris on the bottom right, who brought them things, and
All kinds of things.
Fran drinking coconut water. You've heard of the biblical scripture of the lion and the lamb. There's a cat and a chicken.
But you notice there's a fence between them.
Well, but the cat had come from the other side, though, but then he just, like, was hanging out there. And I had to take a picture. Okay, and so this is Saturday evening. We went to, this is a mission church, which is about to become a church because of the tremendous growth it's had. But a mission church in the Mayari area. And so we went here. The district bought this location and kind of are using this building as their church. And we went out, you see the cactus fence again. It's a little bit kind of on a hill. Again, they're cooking outside. There's a pig there that we got to see. And
She's washing dishes up there in the upper right. Her
Yes.
kitchen is a dirt floor.
yeah, the entirety of this house, so the house is the sanctuary, and it's all dirt floor, and it's being held on the bottom too by like rocks because it's like leaning over. It was just, was one of the poor, I think, places that we visited. And
But it's the closest to any civilization that we went.
yeah, it wasn't too far. Yeah. We gathered with the youth from the church in Mayari, the main church in Mayari, the DS's church, and so they came over. We had this big pig roast. And the pastor is the woman on the bottom right. And what we're doing right there is that she's sharing her testimony to Lisa, Pastor Lisa, and myself. This woman had been basically told several years ago that she was going to die. She had some sort of illness, or I guess some cancer or something, that they told her it was terminal, and she had gotten down to very low weight, and it just, there's a longer story, but it was just very sad. But she had a dream at one point where she received a call from God that she was, in fact, going to be a witness of the gospel and share a story. And I mean, long story short is that she went back to the doctor and was healed, and is alive years later, and is now the pastor of this church because she also said, "Send me, here I am." And she just loves having these pig roasts and parties because she has a great heart for the community and loves to feed people, like literally feed people, but also feed their spirits. So she was a great testimony. The upper right is their bathroom as well.
He was taking a shower while we were there.
Her husband, who is also a seminary student and pastor of another church, was taking a shower in that bathroom there. No. So yeah, that's their, up there on the bottom, top left is their sanctuary. Yeah. And so just, these are a couple random pics. While we were driving, we saw lots of things.
There's our hostess at the bed and breakfast in the morning, getting her vegetables for the day.
Folks waiting for public transport on the bottom right. You can't see it very well. It's a little dark on the screen.
Yeah, there's some of the potholes at that. Yeah, all I could see is a tire going and we're rolling somewhere.
But we didn't have seatbelts, so we would roll even nicer.
Depends on, we were packed in pretty well. We wouldn't. No.
But beautiful landscape, mountains and vegetation. The top right was a picture I got from far. It was a little kid who was trying to fly a kite. It was a little kite that he was trying to fly that I thought was super cute. On the day before we left, I think it was, we had a beach day and the water was incredibly blue. That top right, that's Mary. That's one of the translators. And so we got to do that. And now, the moment you've all been waiting for. Now, our sister church, Takaho. So we went to Takaho twice, Fran and I did. We went on a Friday with the entire group, and then we went on Sunday, she and I, to worship there together. When we went on Friday, we went on the van that we've been talking about. But on Sunday, Ernesto rented a taxi to come get us with him because he doesn't have a car. And this is the taxi that we rode in.
No windows, no headliner, nothing. But the sad part about that is that they're so poor down there, and they take advantage of people. He told Ernesto the price that it would take to, bring us there. And when we got back, he says, no, it's got to be more than that, or I'll leave you here.
So yeah, Ernesto was upset about that, and what he told me was, that's Cuba. That's how it is. So yeah, we got to ride on there, and so Taka was one of the older churches, I would say. So they're one of the larger churches. I was very impressed with the church, not only just the size of it and what they've been able to do, but even more so with the leadership in the church and things that Ernesto has accomplished in the past several years. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a sec. But this is the outside. You see in the front, it's 1957, established there. The sanctuary, bottom left, they were having issues with it, and so that was somewhat recently renovated as well, parts of it. You see on the top right the filters. To the left of that, there's a large, what do you call that? Like a reservoir, yeah, where a cistern, where they get the water for the community from, and also on top they store that there, because you're never quite sure when you'll have water, so they do, when you get it, they save it up and store it. But
Looks like a swamp.
so this back here on the top right is the back of the parsonage. There's us unloading. On the bottom left, there's some bathrooms that they built somewhat recently as
And
well
that has running water.
for the congregation, and then the sanctuary is on the top left.
And there were over 200 that worshiped there that Sunday that we were there.
Yeah, this is one of the kind of larger churches with greater number. But it's also kind of, I think the DS mentioned it's one of the churches that folks learn from, and Ernesto mentors other pastors. I was very impressed. But so these are the building that this church contributed to building, and I'll show it to you in a moment with people. But this is when we went on Friday. This is like the kitchen area and where they sit for their snack and that sort of thing.
The building itself was built, or the facility itself was built by the people, but the material was furnished by us and other churches.
Right, yeah, it was all made by their very hands. Yeah, they work very hard in this church, is what my understanding. And so this is us giving them the things that we brought. And so I told, like a good American, I guess, I said to him, it's not a lot. And, so I told him as we were, about to give it to them, and when he actually saw what it was, he was like, how can you possibly tell me this is not a lot? You have no idea. And so we had, 30-something dresses, the little dresses. We had like 30-something sets of clothes for kids. We had, they went to, when I showed them the school supplies, I've never seen anyone's eyes get that big. For Sunday school, to them that was huge, that we had some construction paper and glue that we brought them. They were just amazed. And so just things that we take for granted, and they weren't very much like us thinking, but to them it was so much. These are the water filters. We bought backups and brought them with us to them to have, since they serve the community. It's not just the church.
And Esther and Dan got stopped in the airport because of them.
Right, yeah, so we actually all got nicknames on this trip. That reminds me, Lisa was handing out nicknames. I can't remember what they all were. I know Dan is el Capitan.
Yeah.
The captain.
Yep. Oh, wandering
Tom the Wanderer. What was Chris? I can't. Oh, I remember it was the secret one was she was the drug dealer because. Oh yes. Because I actually had a cold and she was like giving me vitamins and like cold medicine.
She comes out on Monday in the morning. Here she lines up with all the. Have your choice. Anybody that needs A or C or D. There it is.
What were you, Fran? Fantastic Fran? What was it? Fran something like that.
I don't know.
And Lisa called me the darling of immigration because on the way there and back I got stopped every time. But I did get stopped for the filters the first time. That's what I remember. There was a reason for my story. But so yeah, and their daughter's up there on the right, brought her a little gift, and they were very overwhelmed. And when we came back on Sunday, so this was Friday, when we came back on Sunday, the church leadership had already organized them all, put them in little packets and had names on them. They were going to give them out. They had like 50-something little packets that they were going to give out to specific persons that they knew that were in need in the church, and also who were not part of the church, but persons in the community that they knew had need for these items. And so they were ready and super excited and thankful to be able to share those with them. So just even that I was impressed with, that they were that organized. And so we had a meal together like on that Friday, and Ernesto makes flan.
Was it delicious?
The best flan ever. Like, he makes it, he's very proud of it. And so that was his flan, so I had to show a picture of his flan. So when Fran and I went back on Sunday, we were able to witness. So these were one of the children's Sunday school classes that were meeting, and they had their snack there. The persons were coming from the sanctuary where they had Bible study and were heading to the area to have snack time because they have Sunday school early, then they have a middle time of snack together, and then they have worship. And each of those things, well, not the snack doesn't last hours, but the Sunday school and the worship lasts for hours. And so we got to see them using the kitchen and the snacks, and we were told that for a lot of these folks, this might be, like a major meal for them in the day, or maybe for some, the only meal of that day, or just the fact that they don't have to worry about where they're going to get that meal is a big deal for them. And then we had the blessing to be able to worship with them. It was a tremendous blessing for me. I kept telling Ernesto that it was every detail of it was like planned just for me, right? Because his message spoke to me profoundly. And on the top left is Pastora Ani, that's his wife, and she leads worship. She was tremendous. I kept telling Ernesto, like, why are you coming? You should send her. She was great.
But Ernesto says himself that she's the one that taught him how to preach.
Yeah, he says that, she's basically the one who, taught him how to preach, and he told us that story, and she also went to seminary. But yeah, they have, you see little kids here. I mean, it was packed. Unfortunately, I guess I didn't take a picture, but the sanctuary that you saw earlier that was empty, it was full to the brim and more. And
they were down the aisles.
Yeah, and little kids in the front dancing as worship is going on, and they had young girls who participated in the liturgical dances, and there was a baby presentation, so that's where that baby is from. And so since we weren't officially allowed to participate in the service, which they were really bummed about, because he had announced that I was supposed to preach, and we weren't allowed to do that, and I wasn't allowed to even stand up and say, hey, during worship. So we had a kind of secret meeting after worship where he invited the leadership to meet. And so we got to talk with them, and they asked us questions, and we asked them questions, and it was a really nice time.
These are all council members.
yeah, it was the major leadership of the congregation. And so that's that picture in the background, and that's us and the pastoral family before we headed back to Mayari, and we had a evening worship in Mayari where Ernesto preached. I have to tell you, just throughout the week, so Lily, one of the translators, this is her home church. So we got to hear throughout the week kind of some of the things related to Takaho. And everyone was spoke very highly of Ernesto and Ani's leadership. And I could tell he had empowered the lady in great ways. And I just
The energy and the enthusiasm that they have just rubs off on you.
yeah, I was just very impressed. But throughout the week, what I also kept hearing from Ernesto and Lily, and when we got there visiting Friday and also on Sunday, was that for this congregation, the fact that Fran and I visited was an answer to prayer. They had been praying for someone from their sister church who they regularly pray for. They regularly pray for their sister church, who is us. They had been praying and longing for someone to go visit them from this congregation. And so they were so incredibly just humbled and grateful, while we were there like incredibly humbled and grateful that we were the ones that got to visit them. But I just wanted to express that to you because they pray for you all the time. And it meant so much to them to know that we took our time to go there. And especially Fran, every time Fran went anywhere, they were like, oh my gosh, you came all this way. So it was a bit very, very meaningful for them. We were able to take not only the gifts that we mentioned, but we have a $1,200 commitment to this congregation a year. And we were able to take half of that to them, and we had talked about what were the needs, and Ernesto wanted help with the snack time, and so part of that money went for that. And they still have great needs, and especially given all of the vision that Ernesto has for that community and congregation, they still have so many things that they want to be able to do, and so he expressed that to me to pass along to you as well. He also, one of his dreams is to have his wife Annie come to the U.S. She's never been able to come, and for him, I've heard others talk about the first time he came, he was just, I still think he processes it every night, because to go from a place where you have very little to nothing and then walk into Walmart is like, mind-blowing. And I think he's, just being honest, he's struggled some with that. Just what does that mean? And I can imagine, I struggle when I go the other way and then come back. So just living in that place and coming to Walmart. But he wants so much to share that experience with his wife. And so we're actually working currently on trying to get them here. It costs $160 for each to apply. So we're needing that help with that too. But hopefully for them to come and minister in April. But I have had folks ask me, how was the trip? And it's something I cannot answer, and I can't just say, oh, it was great. It was lots of things. Powerful is the word I keep using because it was convicting, it was life-giving, it was heartbreaking, it was, but it was ultimately just very positive and affirming and just God-infused trip for sure.
But people don't realize that Havana is way up on the left-hand side of your screen, and we were down by Guantanamo, way down on the right-hand side of your screen. So there's big difference between, I've always said since I came back that there's Havana and then there's Cuba.
Yeah, where the arrow is and Havana is on the other side, basically. Dan, do you have anything you want to?
No, I just, their faith still, I can't fathom. Like you said, could you imagine being out there in the middle of nowhere, no family, no nothing? Would you have stayed? I don't know if I had faith enough to do it. But these people do. They start out in the middle of nowhere and have built a church or a mission, whichever, and people come. They walk, they ride horseback, they ride horse and buggy. People here, we couldn't walk across the street to go to church.
It's a wonderful experience to listen to people who have gone on the trip. I mean, I've been many, many times, and I've experienced what they have experienced. And I could sit in this church and I can tell them, you're going to have this happen, you're going to have this happen. You're going to have God moments that cannot be explained other than God. But more than likely, most people would not really believe what I'm saying. How many times did Esther and Fran say, well, to start with, we didn't get religious visas. God knew what he was doing. We visited 16 churches, which we would have never done without that.
And the council meeting was canceled, the conference was canceled.
Yeah, the conference was canceled. God knew what he was doing. God sent us to this little church in the middle of nowhere to get gas, because we didn't have gas. And we find a pastor that needed a computer, and we had a computer. God knew what he was doing. And there's just experience after experience of
And you
that.
can't explain it to anybody.
You can't explain it. No. So it happens every trip. I've been going since 2007. And people say you should write a book. Well, I could write a book on God moments alone. The lady, the pastor, that had stage 4 breast cancer. And it was even in her brain. And she stands there and gives her testimony. And I heard this testimony before and fought back tears. And that's why I wanted her to give it to Esther and Lisa. I can't explain it. I know. It's just, until you go and until you experience yourself, it's very hard to talk about. It's very hard to explain.
And you can't believe it.
And you cannot believe it, and you're not going to believe it when I'm telling you this, but to hear it from Esther and Fran, and hear it from Chris, who's gone before it, and numerous other people.
You can see the pictures, but it still doesn't give you the impact that seeing it real life does.
And one of the most important things, and you heard them say it too, the fact that you came, Esther and Fran came from the United States to visit Taco. 5, 6 of us, whatever it was, went to some of these mountain churches to visit them. You came this far to visit us. And as Esther had said, are there times that they can't help but think, does God even know I'm here? I'm in a mountainside in Cuba, a little dot of a village, and we have nothing.
Miles from nowhere.
Nothing. Does God even know I'm here? And then you have a busload of people, a van load of people come from the United States. That is, I don't care what you say. Money can't buy things like that. And they'll be talking about that experience of Fran and Esther in Tuckahoe for years to come. Years to come. I thank you, Tice Church, for what you do. Because what you see there at Tuckahoe is because of what you've done. The sacrifices that you have gave so they could have that. You have given from your church to this little church, nice-sized church, actually, in Tuckahoe. And most of you will never, ever see it, except right there. I mean, that's the love of Jesus Christ coming out. And I thank you so much. I thank Esther. I thank Fran. And I tell you what, talk about a trooper. You didn't help Fran. You just looked out. She was wonderful. She was wonderful. That's all I got to say. Chris, I don't know if you got something to say, but I'm going to give us...
You said it all. Would you talk about how much luggage you took over and the college and what you brought back and a little bit about the rules and what you could do?
So this was the first time, my understanding is that we went commercial. Usually there's a charter, but since it's a chartered plane, so this was commercial, so it was a little different than other trips apparently. Typically, I guess they take 5+ suitcases or something.
Unfortunately, this was a commercial trip. So we took about 2 bags each, plus maybe a little bit more, give or take. The last trip I was on in November, what did we have in the whole group? About 30 bags? About 30 bags total. And that was the charter trip. But with commercial, we weren't sure. And they wanted to charge about $200 each additional bag. So we were very careful as to what we brought this trip.
And it's funny to watch them in the airport. One of the girls weighed her bag. Oh, it's over. And she's, we weigh your bag and see if it's under so we can transfer some of the stuff from my bag into your bag.
My bag was 2 pounds over, and she wanted to charge me $200. So we quick figured out whose bag was short, and we transferred the weight over in the middle of the airport there. So, and I'm sorry, what was your second question?
What did you bring back? What did you bring back? Were you able to eat just about all of it for their benefit?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I took very little like personal items. Most all of my personal items were in my carry-on. The 2 suitcases that I checked were all for things to leave there, and we actually left 2 suitcases. Fran left a suitcase. Judy had given me a suitcase that I left over there. I borrowed a suitcase from Edith, so I had to bring that one back. But but basically, yeah. I mean, we bought a couple souvenirs.
And the gifts that they gave us.
And some of the gifts, so we did bring those back, but you know, it wasn't too much.
Basically, it was just the clothes we had on.
Yeah, it was way less than we did. And so as tourists, we were allowed to be in Sunday worship. We just weren't allowed to like stand up and be introduced or anything like that. So we were allowed to go to any like regularly scheduled service, but if it was like a specially scheduled service, like the conference would have been, or like the pastor's conference, we weren't allowed to participate in those sorts of religious activities. Like, I wasn't allowed to preach or teach. I could pray with people, like separately, but I wasn't allowed to like publicly do anything like that.
Were there people checking on that?
The lady who came to check our temperature, we think is what she was doing.
Were there other people besides her?
Well, they all knew, yeah, they knew, even before we got to the district superintendent's house, somebody had already come to check if we were staying at the church, because we weren't supposed to. Even before we got there, like, from the airport to there, like, they knew where we were and what we were doing, and
They know everything.
they know everything, yes.
At the bed and breakfast, when we checked in, she had to have our passport and everything, all the information on our passport, our home address and everything. She had to have it recorded for the government.
Yeah, because they were going to come check and see if we were in fact there and if we were legit, I guess. Yes.
I don't know what the stipulation is now, but as a congregation, are you allowed to collect clothing and send it to a church over there, or are you not? Is it still to a point that you can't send?
I mean, if someone goes to Cuba, you can take it, which is what we did.
You can't mail them.
No, you can't
When
mail
my husband
things.
was in Vietnam, they had an orphanage, and he wrote home, and I put it in the paper. And other churches would actually collect and send it to the orphanage in Vietnam. enough. But the government is still restricting.
Yeah, it wouldn't get there. It just wouldn't make it to the church.
I asked one of the girls about mailing something, and she says maybe it'd get there next year.
Maybe. Depending what it is. If it was closed, I doubt it would get there. If it was a letter, it might get there. Yeah. Any other questions?
There was no issue with the medications that you were able to take to them? And the eyeglasses and those things?
No, so I was trying to not take a ton of each thing so as to worry, but that's actually another God moment I just remembered. So we weren't supposed to take a ton of specific things, but Lisa bought a ton of things. And she did not get stopped because because they got distracted by my filters. By mine and Dan's filters. Because when she was sorting her stuff, we were like, how did you get all of this in here? Like, how did they let you? And it was because they were talking to me for a while, making me empty things and open things and asking me questions. And she was with her big old suitcase full of medicines, like,
All the luggage was open because we found papers that the security had left in our luggage, that they had opened it and sorted it.
yeah, U.S. Customs left a nice note in my stuff, but then also the Cuba. But that was our guess, because we were like, how did they let her, she had like a giant suitcase with like multivitamins.
2 giant suitcases.
All of these things, but the only one they was the darling of immigration was the one who got stopped. So
What were they worried about the filters were?
they just didn't know. It was like these like cylinder things inside of a suitcase, like. Right, no, they made me unwrap every single one of them after I opened it, and then they set them on the floor and had like a bomb-sniffing dog come and smell them.
Was this the Americans?
This is in Cuba. So yeah, when my suitcase came out, they came and like found me, like, this is your suitcase, right? Come with me. And so
Aren't you glad you spoke Spanish?
yeah. I was fine. I was like, yeah, all right, let's go.
You were not sweating?
No, I wasn't. If I was somewhere else where I didn't speak the language, I probably would be, but not in Cuba. Anyone else?
If that had been me, I'd have been screaming for help.
It must have helped a lot for you to speak the language. She did great.
It helped me.
Yeah, no, I spoke to people all the time, and they have great translators, but I also got to interact with others in Spanish, and I was teasing them because I get the stuff that they didn't want to translate because it was jokes or something. I caught those too. So I would tease him about it. I was like, I would tell the DS, I'm going to translate that. And he was like, no. Ernest.
I thought it was kind of funny seeing the slide of the watermelon, because when Ernesto came to the United States and he stayed with me both times, the first time he came in, I remember that night he came in, they said he liked beef because he never gets beef, so we had
Beef is illegal.
We had beef that night, and had several people from the church there, and so for dessert I had fruit, and I had this big tray of watermelon, and I brought it out, and I had the cake and some other things, and I said, would you like watermelon? He goes, oh, no watermelon. He said, we eat watermelon all the time. No
Nice. That sounds like Ernest.
One of the last things that we,
What's funny was one morning I was getting ready to go to church, and so he came there and he was trying to make motions to me for something. I couldn't figure out what he was trying to say, and so we interpreted everything he could do, and he was going like this, and I thought he was trying to watch something, and he was wanting an iron to press his clothes. So that was kind of strange, but the thing that really threw him for a flip was when I put the dirty dishes in the dishwasher and they come out clean. Amazing. And I can attest to the fact that I took him to Walmart when
We challenged Ernesto to learn English. Lily is one of his parishioners there at Takaho. So I said to her, it's a challenge for you. When you come to the United States, the only thing you have to learn English is to deliver your sermon at our church in English.
Yeah, and he said if Lily like translates it for him, writes it out or something, he'd read it. But no, Lily was, yeah, she's incredible. She was a teacher.
Yeah, she was an English teacher. And I had her translating for me on numerous trips. And it got to the point where the government didn't like her helping on Christian trips. And they said, well, no, you can't go. You can't go with it. And they said, you're going to have to make a choice. And she says, okay, bye. She quit her teacher's job to be translator and to talk about Jesus Christ. Yeah. So Lily's been with me probably, I think, 6 years, more or less now. She did travel to London for 6 months, but yeah, the government said no. No.
Do they teach any English in their schools?
They teach English. They do teach English, yeah.
Do you know some Spanish too?
About 2 words. But I got 2 very good translators.
Yes, question back there?
Do you ever feel afraid?
I didn't, no. I mean, maybe at night when they were driving, but no, I didn't. I never felt afraid.
I did that night because all I could think of was the van here on 82 that blew a tire and rolled and killed people. And that was in my mind when we hit one of those potholes. What if that happened to us way out there? And here we are in Cuba, from the United States. What happens? So I could have kissed the ground 2 different nights coming home.
Any other questions?
Where did you, when you flew out, where did you land? What part of Cuba?
Holguín,
Way down where the arrow is,
Yeah.
there's an airport there.
Oh,
an international airport.
so there's one at both ends?
Yes.
There's several throughout.
Oh,
But there's only 2 internationals. There's several airports.
oh, okay.
There's more than 2 international. Because I've traveled to Cienfuegos from Miami last time.
That's an international airport?
Well, flew from Miami.
What was the arrow? Took the arrow away, Carolyn.
Yeah, the arrow's on this one. But Holguín, you can see Holguín there.
If you see where Guantanamo is, we're not too far from Guantanamo.
So yeah, we flew from Miami to Holguín. And Havana is, you can see on the left.
The little red square.
But yeah, we're not very far as miles go from Florida, right? We're neighbors, really.
90 miles?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
At the bed and breakfast, were you able to take a shower? And what are the restrooms like in general?
Yeah, they were, I mean, again, of the places I've traveled, they were some of the nicer ones. You have a toilet. It doesn't have a toilet seat, though. They don't have toilet seats.
That
for
porcelain
windows.
is awful cold in the middle of the night.
There's just a basic sink, and there was a shower that had, like a suicide shower. Yeah, I guess that's what they call them. But it had a heater attached to it.
These are actually, and they no exposed windows in bunk beds or?
No, it was, so when we walked in, there was in our room anyway, Chris's room was different. She can tell you if she wants. But Fran and I's room, it was a full-size bed basically there. And they said, we could bring you like another little twin thing. And Fran was like, yes, please. Like, I don't want to share my bed with Esther. Is what she said. No, so they brought in like this little cot thing, which was, yeah, it wasn't super comfortable, but it wasn't awful. And put that next to like Fran's bed. So it was a little tight in there in that room, but
That's why I thought it was just booping my bed, but it was a
that's why she thought I was moving her bed. Because we were really, like, it was really close. But it was the earthquake. Right. So yeah, I mean, it wasn't bad.
It was comfortable.
Yeah, Chris's room was like on the second floor.
Who got the cot?
I did, of course. I would not have had it any other way.
That's what I would have done.
Age has its
Of
privilege.
course, I would never have taken the bed. Yeah, her bathroom was like in the room. There was like a curtain that separated it or something. I don't know.
When you were traveling, I didn't see any movies, but was there a lot of military people around checking people out? Like,
Not necessarily like checking people out, but they were around.
We saw one policeman, no traffic lights,
No traffic lights, and we saw
the
Couple
one policeman
police.
that stopped us that night.
now where are we on this far in now? That's quite a bit of mountain there, isn't it?
there's mountains, yeah. We were in the valley, but you could see the mountains when you drove and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm.
Since there weren't many lights, did you see many stars tonight, or?
Yes, it was beautiful at night. When we were traveling out in the country at night, I wanted to tell our driver, stop, because I wanted to look. But it was gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. Even when we got back to the bed and breakfast, I would stand on the stairs looking up. It was just beautiful. You could see so many stars.
Yeah, and I mean, it's beautiful landscape there, and it was kind of chilly, as I mentioned, because of, I guess January is a little chilly there.
Unlike summertime.
Right.
What about their warm season? Do they have a lot of mosquitoes and stuff like that there?
I think Florida, same thing. It's the same as Florida.
You see everything here is open. Pretty much everything is open.
Yes. Yes, no screens. Yeah. So yes, in the summertime, it probably would be buggy. Yes.
Is there any crime?
That's an interesting question.
You don't see the drugs that we do.
You don't hear about the things that we hear about, and what the DS told me when I asked him that question, because there was like something happened before we got there. There was like a murder, and that was a big deal, because usually you don't hear about it, and I guess it doesn't happen quite as frequently. But I asked him, does that usually happen? He said it happens, but you don't hear about it because there's no press. Like, the press doesn't like report these things. But the crime is nowhere near like we would say other countries, I would imagine.
But is it just because you don't hear about it? I mean, if usually poor people, there's a tendency, or there could be, that they would have more stealing and things like that. But do they just hold it right at the, like you can go to jail here 100 times and get out and do it over again. Over there, you may go once, and if you get out and do it again, you may never, I don't know.
Well, this is the thing, there's no press over there
So you don't know.
you don't hear about it. But I asked directly about the drugs, because over here, if you see 2-3 people in a huddle in a doorway, you think, oh boy, they're drugs. So I asked them, and they said, no, they're just spending fellowship.
Well, I watched the program, they have a lot of drinking over there, I do know that. Which was,
And down the street from here too. There is crime. He did tell me there's crime, but you don't hear quite as much about it. But it's not, even what you don't hear about is not like here. It's not like what you hear here. Well, actually, the largest percentage of persons in prison are in prison because they were caught owning cattle. Because cattle is, you can't like eat it or sell it, it's illegal.
illegal for Cubans to have beef.
Actually, the
Can't have
government
beef.
controls the whole.
Right, but beef specifically for them to have, yeah. So whenever I went to Cuba a couple years ago, and this time, if ever we were fed beef, it was black market beef. And that was like a big crime, basically.
Esther, does the government in Cuba, under Castro, he was an avowed atheist, do they try to suppress Christians there a lot or not? From what you could experience when you were there?
I mean, I think there's been kind of an evolution over time. I mean, our district superintendent from this district here in the States tells stories of being imprisoned and persons being imprisoned earlier on in the revolution. And there was a persecution of churches. I think over time it's gotten less intense. But, I mean, there still is not like the government doesn't like help you at all or try to, I mean, it's just something you do, I don't know, separate of the government.
One thing the church does there, they don't talk politics. They're very, very careful about talking politics. And they're very careful about what they say in front of people that they don't know very well. They're very careful about that.
I mean, I've always heard that the government sends like secret persons to be within congregations observing to see what they're doing, that sort of thing.
I'll give you a fun example. Pastor Sell, host, the 2 weeks after Castro died, there's supposed to be no music in the country whatsoever. So he had a church service and they didn't play music, and then he tried to play one song at the end of the church service, and they started up the music. The second they started up the music, he got a phone call on his cell phone. Said, stop the music, and they had to stop.
Because the country was supposed to be in mourning.
The country was supposed to be in mourning, and they were enforcing it.
I mean, they don't like to see people join the church. The government doesn't like when the church garners influence, and they tried to send spies in, and the DS talked about people who were sent as spies who then were converted and things like that. But all right. I want to mention